Hi guys, I spoke to Josh Russell of the Stop the Tories about the campaign of tactical voting and where you can find out how to stop the Tory in your constituency. Hi everyone, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about yourself for anyone who's new to the channel here?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me, Max. So I'm Josh Russell, Josh Forward on the internet, and I run the Movement Forward and Stop The Tories Vote, the current tactical voting project that Carol Vorderman is fronting.
So I'd like to run through a few questions with you. I put it out on the community page on my channel, and I got a lot of feedback from people, a lot of interesting questions. So I've tried to paraphrase, I've tried to put some of them together to make it more interesting. But let's start off with the first one. So why is it necessary to convince people to vote against the Tories? Why is it necessary to convince people to engage in tactical voting?
I mean, first of all, clearly the current sentiment is very anti-Tory. But actually, if you look back historically, the majority of the vote has always been anti-Tory as well. But our election system doesn't reflect that in the result. So tactical voting is simply about trying to turn the intent of anti-Tory voters into an outcome that is anti-Tory, and to show what the a close approximation of what the actual proportional outcome would be, as a kind of a preview, but also as a preview of proportional representation, but also as a way to get the Tories out. It's a simple redistribution of the intention of the vote. So the polling shows what people want, but if everyone just voted that way, then they might be wasting their votes in places where actually the best candidate might be a Lib Dem or a Green or an SNP candidate, for example. So it's a kind of hack around the current electoral system to show what the true intent is of the people.
And so how do people find out in their constituency in what way to vote? How do they go to a website? What websites are trusted in your opinion?
So if you were to believe the press, there aren't any websites for people to look at, and there's no one doing this analysis at all. People, just look at the last results on Wikipedia and try and work it out for themselves, voting for whoever came second. And while that probably does happen a bit, tactical voting has been quite a big deal since 2017, and lots of very smart people have been doing analysis, not just us on Stop The Tories Vote, but 4 or 5 other sources as well, which includes newspapers like the Mirror and the Observer, where people are looking not only at the results of last year, which you have to map onto the new boundaries that constituencies take, because just looking at the results might give you the wrong impression, because some constituencies have changed a hell of a lot since then. So the results aren't really reflective of the current electorate in those places. But then also integrating things like all the polling that's happening. There's polls coming out almost every day at the moment. We're trying to keep on top of integrating every single one, which is helping us focus down on the really tough seats. It's not really changing the ones that we kind of already knew would be the, what we already knew the advice would be in. And then also the insights that you get from where the parties are really campaigning. So we've worked out what all the target seats are of the 3 major opposition parties. The Labour Party published what they called their non-battleground seats, where they basically weren't going to be putting much effort in. The Lib Dems have a similar thing that was out in terms of where they're prioritising. The Green Party has just blatantly put it up on their webpage, on their homepage. These are the 4 people that are our targets. So with all of that information, and then in some of the harder ones, using a secondary level of things like local council results, us and other websites are trying to provide what we think is the actual best candidate to put your vote behind, to lend your vote to. That often is who came second last time, but not always. And there are some complicated ones where there might have been an independent, like Dominic Grieve, for example, where votes might have shifted around, and it's actually very, very difficult to work out what to say. So we got down to 26 tough ones. In the last few days, we've got down to about 6. And I think we're going to be locking them in today, which is Monday, so we can focus on actually getting the word out next. But yeah, you just go to stoptories.vote and put your postcode in. Very, very easy.
Fantastic. I'd like to ask some more questions. For example, when it comes to turnout, is turnout going to be an issue when it comes to tactical voting?
Always. I mean, turnout's an issue always. We really can't tell what's going to happen this time. If you look at the by-elections, which are not necessarily a good measure, the Tory vote just did not happen at all. There just was no Tory vote. Like, they just stayed home. You can see some graphs of what happened in those by-elections. and it looks like there was a huge kind of growth for Labour Party or the Lib Dems, and there's winning by elections. Actually, the numbers were pretty similar. It's just that the Tories didn't really show up. You might think now that the Tories aren't going to show up in the general election because then, you know, a lot of Tory voters are not really, you know, out there saying we're going to vote Tory, we're going to vote Tory. But there is that kind of shy Tory voter thing where they might not be putting up a poster in their window, but they're going to show up and vote Tory. They're going to put their, you know, tick in the blue box, as it were. So yeah, we encourage, of course, you know, even if you're not going to vote tactically, show up, obviously, like, you know, the whole it's your democratic right, it's your duty kind of thing. Even under a broken system, you should try. But there are actually 80 target seats we have where even just a handful of votes could really, really swing it. If you can go to stopthetories.vote/key seats, you'll see that list of 80. And, you know, the simple message there is like, you know, take a friend to vote. A lot of research shows that if you just ask one person, it's much easier than, you know, spamming a whole Facebook group. Having a one-to-one conversation with someone much more encouraging them to vote than that, because it's personal. So yeah, vote doubling by taking a friend, we're encouraging, but we're also trying to get the word out about those 80 key seats.
Yeah, good idea. And you know, you could go for a beer or something after.
Absolutely. You know, in Australia they have sausage sizzle, democracy sausages afterwards. I think
That's
we
a
need
good
more
idea.
like that.
Can I ask another question that came up a lot was about where the tactical voting is focused. So is it mainly in England? What about the rest of the UK, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland?
Yeah, so so first of all, we decided to leave Northern Ireland to alone in this case. You know, for a start, you know, the outcome we're looking for, the anti-Tory outcome, is not really going to be affected too much by what happens in Northern Ireland. Wales and Scotland, of course, are then the next ones. Wales, yeah, we're absolutely operating in Wales as best we can. Scotland, you know, there's a mix of intent in Scotland, obviously, about getting the Tories out and big independence movement too. We're very conscious of that. And actually, in a lot of Scotland, the choice is between Labour and the SNP. And so in many places in Scotland, we're saying, you know, you can confidently vote for the SNP or Labour, knowing that actually a Tory isn't going to win because basically Scotland's rejected the Tories already, you know. But we want to give people the confidence that they can vote for one of those two. But yeah, quite honestly, you know, while we want to help voters in Wales and Scotland, really, the Tory problem's in England, isn't it? Right? We all know that. And so if you go to, again, I'm going to do a lot of pitching, but if you go to stopthetories.vote/map, there's an interactive map there about what happens with various levels of tactical voting, what all our advice looks like, and what the, you know, obviously comparing that to the result of 2019. And a lot of it, yeah, is England. And you can literally see, you know, where the major cities, you can almost do what you want because they're very, you know, I want to say they're predominantly progressive, but that's obviously another label that doesn't necessarily fit to everyone. But then they are mostly not Tory, is the point. And it's really the places in between the cities where you can see this flip of Conservative to Labour, and it's fascinating using the slider on the website on the map page. So yeah, we're really focusing on England because England's got the Tory problem. Now, ironically, and again, going back to what I said earlier, predominantly, we've actually been voting against the Tories forever, you know, so it's just our electoral system that is the issue. So England is not Tory, Britain is not Tory, our election system is Tory, and we're helping people to, you know, distribute their votes. You know, it's not about getting more votes for the Labour and the Lib Dems, weirdly, even though that's what the polls look like. It's just about the distribution of them.
So you've already more or less covered this, but like, how should people vote when the choice is maybe Labour or the Greens? So tactical voting doesn't really come in there, does it?
Yeah, and this is really about the intention of Stop the Tories, Stop Vote, right? This is not a Labour campaign. This is not a Lib Dem campaign. We've got a crowdfunder. We don't take money from the parties or any of their funders, although some of them might have given us 20 quid, I imagine, you know, in the crowdfund. Slash donate. Yeah, so the intention
I
is
leave all the links in the description of this
yeah.
video, so do check
Okay,
them out,
thank you.
people. Please do.
We were trending on Crowdfunder last week. It was great. Yeah, so you know, there's obviously a lot of talk about how big the Labour majority is going to be, and it is going to be big. But that is not our goal. Our goal is get the Tories out, stop the Tories. But we have a stretch goal, let's say, and our stretch goal is to put the Tories into third place behind the Lib Dems. So, you know, you could just say, oh, we just need to get everyone to vote Labour. But again, in a lot of places, that's not how it works. People are better to vote for the Lib Dems. But actually, we've been putting a lot of emphasis on making sure that we are way more accurate, or not, that's not necessarily right, but like we're putting a lot of emphasis on making sure we can offer the best advice possible in the seats where we think the Lib Dems are the ones to vote for, because there's a real chance that they do become the official opposition, and that's absolutely game changing to the whole narrative of what goes on in Parliament for the next 5 years.
Yes, and that brings us. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say we only need 20% tactical voting to make that happen, where you end up with about 72 Lib Dems and about 65 Tories. And Good Morning Britain said that 45% of voters are willing to vote tactically, which did include, some Conservative and Reform voters. But 2 days ago, we needed 22% to vote tactically to get the Tories into third. Now we only need 20%, and the reason for that is that the polls have been updated and informed our data. So that's the real goal of this. Is it's a complete game changer. They would lose everything if they weren't in opposition.
Can I ask, what are your goals after the general election? So what about proportional representation? Will there be a push for that? Can you tell us a bit more about maybe what you're planning after the 4th of July?
Massively important. I mean, this is the actual key to this whole thing. I sometimes joke that we're a proportional representation campaign in disguise. We kind of are. And you covered yourself, Alistair Campbell's soundbite the other day, where he was basically saying that this is going to be one of the most disproportionate elections of all time. And the Financial Times have also said that. The Times have said this is the tactical voting general election. So our first mission, make tactical voting mainstream, was kind of accomplished. We started that 3 years ago. So it's kind of two things. First of all, a step towards proportional representation has to be to get the Tories out. We don't get it without that. They would be very happy if they'd won to carry on with the current system, right? So any campaign for proportional representation has to be about getting the Tories out. And we very early realized that actually you could just use that as a way to educate people about how crappy our electoral system is, because you kind of go, oh, I can vote my Tory out with tactical voting, great, but why do I have to tactically vote? Why can't I just vote with my heart, right? So it's kind of like helping people on that journey of understanding, that representation is not really what they think it is in this country, and that there is a better way, and that elections aren't just elections. There's all sorts of dials and knobs you can tweak to make them more representative. So while it's very likely to be the most disproportionate election of all time, of course, people are going to be talking about that, right? It's going to be the topic, I think. Like, what the hell happened in our election? How come
you're going to have like the Liberal Democrats on one side talking about how, we did really well, and then you'll have Reform UK on the other side saying, we did really well with votes, but we didn't pick up as many as proportionate seats. So yeah, I think there's. But will there be campaigns like yourself to pressure the Labour Party to support PR?
Absolutely. So, this is not necessarily exclusive because I've said it quite a few times, but, very, very quickly after the election, we pivot straight into pushing for PR. That's exactly what our movement is all about. It's about achieving PR and then looking forward to 2029 and what that election looks like if we get PR, which could be really, really exciting. And I think exciting for the major parties too, honestly. They've all got an amazing chance under PR. That can you imagine if they weren't all arguing about who was the best candidate to get the Tory out, and if they were arguing about policy instead?
Yes.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but all the candidates in marginal seats are all just like, I'm the best one to get the Tory out, rather than I'm the best one on the environment or the NHS. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's come secondary. So 2029, if they're actually able to argue on policy because we've got PR, it's going to be an incredible election, I think. So yeah, I mean, our whole thing is we need to build a big movement that says we voted tactically. We don't want to have to do this again. We really want our votes to count next time. In fact, you can earn our votes by making them count. And we'll show up for policy, which I believe a lot of these candidates, we share the views of, but they're having to appeal to the votes they need under the current system, which is 50 marginal seats that have all been manipulated by the Daily Express, essentially. So I've got, I'm very, very optimistic about what comes next, but we do need to keep up the pressure. And it's just phase 2 for us. And we've grown incredibly over the last month. It's been crazy. We have a very, very strong chance of coming out of this as one of the biggest democracy communities in the country. And that gives us a lot of influence, I think.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for speaking with me today. I'll leave a link in the description, all the links in the description of this video. So do check them out, folks. Do check out your constituency because Josh may have some information there for which way you should vote in order to get the Tories out. Thanks once again, and fingers crossed for this week that we get the result that we hope. And I'll see you on the other side of the election, probably in a video about that for PR. Thanks once again for speaking with me today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to catch up afterwards.